Hello. This is 500 magic schools around the world, the panel discussion, where our esteemed panel of experts talks about magic schools that they run for kids in their countries and the lessons that they've learned from them. Please welcome Josefin, Westborg, Berned, and Cole. My name is Pohjola. I'm the host for this thing, and I'm one of the people who run Velhokoulu, the wizard school in Helsinki, Finland. Without further ado, please introduce yourselves and tell us what kind of magic school do you run and where.
So I work at Livebyrån, and that used to be Liveverkstaden in Gothenburg in Sweden. And we do have a magic school, but it's not a standard sign-up school that is a campaign. Usually we do short LARPs in libraries where we have the magic theme. We have made educational themed LARP where kids learn English. So we have set a couple of different LARPs in the same world that is ordered by usually a municipality or a school, and then we run them. So different setup, but that's what we do.
And now Cole.
My name is Cole Ford. I am the custodian for the Seven Sisters School of Sorcery, a spellcasting school that is based out of North London. It is primarily for the local kids in our community here, quite specifically, rather than open to anybody, and it is run in coordination with our local community centre.
My name is Anders, and I work for the Danish NGO Rollespilsfabrikken, the Larp factory, or role-playing factory, and we run a magic school called Mimos Brønd, or Mimos Well. It's based in Copenhagen, in our community house, and runs once a month. Just so it's said, I'm not the headmaster of the school, and I'm not a regular teacher. It's a other group that runs it right now, just so it's said. Not to take the honor from them and their good work. And it runs once a month, 12 times a year, 10 to 12 times a year. So Mike.
The Velhokoulus in Helsinki, they run, we have a weekend every 2 months or so. And during a weekend, we have 2 LARPs because the demand is so great and it's still growing. One LARP lasts for roughly 5 hours, including three lessons, lunch, and then some sort of climax at the end. Much of it's the same players coming back to play their character again and again if they manage to sign up on time. The first 1 or first 2 Velhokoulus were set in the Harry Potter universe, that the Finnish offshoot of the Hogwarts School of Wizardry. But then we changed it. We created a completely unique IP for ourselves, based on Finnish local mythologies, Finnish, Swedish, Russian, Sami, and switched part of traditional magic school design or Harry Potter design that didn't really fit well with game design like some of the houses were less interesting than others for in Harry Potter, but we I think found ways to make all of them interesting. What about you guys? Do you run LARPs in the Harry Potter universe, or have you created your own? If it's your own, please tell us a little bit about it.
We are kind of in between, I would say. We usually say it's inspired by Harry Potter and other magic schools, and then we don't define it, but we say it's the Swedish school called Draupner, where they are at. This is very practical for us, since you will always have a couple of really, really Harry Potter nerdy kids showing up, and they know everything, and we don't. So you don't want them saying, that's not how that spell works. So we make up our own spells to just work around that, which makes it easier to handle. So for us, it's not, it could be in the Harry Potter world, but it could be in another world. We don't define it as clearly because the kids kind of like to think about it as Harry Potter a lot of the time. So we're not going to stop them, but we're not. Since it's IP, you don't want to get into trouble, and we'd like to work around things. And we have, I mean, the shortest LARP we have is around 10 minutes in that world, where we have a quick, what is LARP? Do you want to try it out? And you're thrown in and get to do a test to see if you can come into the school and apply. So we have everything from that up till right now. We have just had a 1-day experience that is a full day, but we would love to make longer ones also, but it's a bit about money and time and so on. But for us, that's how it works. So we are kind of in between Harry Potter or not.
The Seven Sisters School is entirely homegrown intellectual property. The school itself is inspired by the Worst Witch TV series from the BBC. It's not a deliberate attempt to avoid Harry Potter. It's more that the target audience and who we're trying to reach out to want stories with a much more North African, Middle Eastern flavour. So we look for our mythology and the source of our school to be from the teachings of Tarik the Wanderer and the teachings between the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers and the Magi of the 17th and 16th century. So for that, we had to create a school out of whole cloth so that it can meet the needs of the community that we represent.
For the magic school that we run in everyday language, it's just called the magic school. Like, it's also the way that we advertise it for the kids and the parents. And it's very, you could call it a loose fiction. We also called it a flexible and inconsistent fiction, like it inspires for the kids what they want. Of course, there is a name for the school. There's houses inspired in that way from the Harry Potter universe, and also links into the College of Wizardry universe. So there's the option there for the kids to dream on where to go to. But the important part of the LARP is what is happening at the school, not the world around it. So the house is inspired by Norse mythology, and the stories is like the classic, like there is something going on in the school and something is going wrong, or somebody is trying to take over the school, or a monster is loose. Like, that is the plot line of the story. So it's very much here and now stories and not that complicated. I also think it works quite well with the age group, since we're going down to 8 years old and up, that there is the need for complexity comes later.
For us, the youngest children are 7, and the oldest, typically we get some people when they're like 14, 15-year-olds, and then they would like to love it, but then everybody else is in elementary school, and then it's kind of lame. But yeah, what do you think is the attraction for kids? Why do they want to take part in these LARPs? At least for us, the demand is staggering. There's a huge, massive need for Harry Potter, a massive need for magical LARPs. I wonder if it's because it's a magic school, or can we achieve this with LARPs of other teams as well? What do you think?
I would say it really, like for us that have different types of LARPs in this world, we have some aimed for schools and some aimed for libraries. And if I look at the ones at the libraries, we have one of them is kind of Harry Potter inspired, but we have different LARPs inspired by other IPs also that is made specifically for libraries. But we see them keep coming back and asking us to rerun the inspired by Harry Potter Magic School over and over again. We sell that a lot more than the other ones, both because they usually have, like the libraries have a lot of Harry Potter themed stuff in the fall break for the children, so it fits well for the libraries. But it's also such a big IP that we have, at that LARP, they can be a maximum of 16 participants. And we have usually one of 16 that knows what LARP is. The rest of them are there because Harry Potter and Magic School and WoW. They're not there because they know about LARP. Even if after the LARP, I think more or less every time we have had maximum one kid saying they do not want to LARP again, right? Like, let's get going, let's do another LARP now. But most of the time, every kid just want to do it again. So it sells LARP in its own, but they're there for the Magic School.
Yeah, I think for us, the power of having something where you can imagine a solution to your problems, and then even if it's just make-believe, have those problems resolve in an environment where life is quite complicated around here, being able to have that fantasy for young people and for children, you see the transformative effect it has on them straight away. The idea that this is a world they can escape to for a short period of time, where they actually have genuine control over their environment. They can pretend that all of the things that stress them out on a daily basis just aren't a factor for the next hour or so. And that, frankly, is a huge part of the appeal of what we do here.
Besides what the rest of you have been saying, I also think there is something appealing to play around in the school institution. There is something about that you can be a good student, you can be a bad student in that whole situation, and you can do other things, like you're maybe one of the teachers is like evil and trying to take over the world, which kicks another kind of flavor, and we have the term close to home, but it's a fiction that is related. They're playing around in an institution that is relatable for kids in another way, because they spend so much time in institutions in that age, in the school institution, and also is something that I think it is the ground of a lot of the magic wizard stories that we see is evolving around schools. Like if we go out of the Harry Potter verse and look at other TV series, or movies, or book, they also evolve around the school, which is like, as Cole was saying about imagining that you can solve the problem with magic, and we can make that real in the LARP.
We've found that there's, at least for our LARPs, many kids have told us that one of the most important appeals of the LARPs is that they can turn invisible like this, and then go to the teacher's lounge and steal their candy. And it's like this transgressing borders with a permit. It has a great appeal for them. But obviously they come because of the magic school, but they stay because they can piss off adults and not get punished. Cole, I have a specific question for you.
Yeah.
You, I think you told me earlier on in private that most of your students your players are from minority backgrounds.
Yeah, almost exclusively.
Can you explain that a little bit?
This is a neighborhood that is predominantly BME, people of color. The actual setting itself was developed by my best friend, Tarek Rizvi, when he wanted to create a Larp wizard school many years ago. And that's what we're continuing here, was his work, which is why we're custodians. We just organize and do the paperwork. The actual running of the school itself is run by the club members and by the residents around here. It's interesting. So I did want to add, actually, that the other part of the appeal is that for quite a lot of the people who come to our school, this was the first time they'd come across magicians with a distinctly African or Middle Eastern feel and origin. Gaelic, Celtic, British. Obviously, I have a lot of love for that as traditions, but that's actually much more exotic around here and not as easily relatable as magi and astrology and the sources of sciences are. So we have a different focus, and we like it that way.
Interesting. And just for the benefit of those of our viewers who are never been to a magic school, this is what the magic school in Finland more or less looked like. This is from the first magic school Larp. As you can see, the demographics are, I guess, a little bit different than Cole's Seven Sisters School of Spellcasting. I think we had our first LARPer of color in the third or fourth LARP. This is a different country. But anyway, this is what it looks like. This is one of the teachers, and this is one of the houses. So all the kids from different ages in the same house. And this is the first prop that we got. It's this huge thing that looks great in pictures. I don't know what it is. I assume that pictures from other magic school LARPs are somewhere in that vein. So, small questions for everybody. One small question. What do you call those magic users? In the Harry Potter world, they're called witches and wizards, which is a mouthful. We call them velho, which is an old and currently still in use Finnish word that's gender neutral and just means wizard.
I would say we mix it up a bit because it's not just me, we are on different people who run it. So I think it depends on who runs it, what we actually use. We haven't established something, but we try to keep it gender neutral when we can. So it's sometimes we use magiker, or like that would sound like magician in English, but I just found out from Cole here that magician is not the same, since that's a like what I got in my head person in English, which it's not in Swedish. But I think you might get a häxa or trollkarl in Swedish also that is more gendered. So I think we mix a bit, but we try to keep it gender neutral.
So we actually wanted to use magician, to be honest. We actually wanted to, but it was the kids who told us that they associate magicians as rabbits out of hats and prefer wizards. Officially, we use magi and seers for people for whom magi or anything close to wizard is culturally sensitive. they choose then to engage with the same fiction, but as seers and wise people rather than necessarily as practitioners of magic.
Anders?
For the magic school in Denmark, it's called Magiker, like wizards, but it's like a gender neutral term on it. Sorry for the plings, it was the group answering. So, yeah, Magiker. A person that do magic is the literal translation of it, or meaning of it. I think there were some tries to call it witchers, like the Goddess Visible are using, but it was too complicated for the kids to understand and talk about. And it's more natural just to link Magiker, a person that do magic. Your mic, Mike?
Mike. I also realized that I spent a good while of our viewers' time adjusting my hat when I thought the frame was on somebody else. But there we go. Do you have a main plot for each run of the LARP, or is it just a collection of one magic lesson after another, and then when it's enough, that's the LARP? For example, in our LARPs, we always have some sort of, like Anders said, somebody's attacking the school, or there's a curse on the ghosts of the school, or there's some sort of mystery, and usually the stuff that's taught at the lessons can be used to solve that mystery somehow. At least on some of them, and sometimes there's stuff hidden around the location that they can find and then use that to solve the mystery. It would be a lot easier to just have, like, recruit teachers and then, okay, you teach this, fine, let's go. But we always have a main plot, and we also have a campaign plot that's overarching the individual LARPs. How do you do it?
For us, it depends on which ones of our LARPs it is, but I mean, they are kind of pre-written, railroaded, so there's definitely a plot. We have the teach them English LARP, where we actually use witchered as a term also when we teach them English, but then they also get to, it's the classic, they have lessons, but one of the teachers are evil. Surprise, it's the guest teacher. Who would have thought? But the other LARPs we have in that universe are actually not set on the school. They are trying to get to the school, or they are going to, like, our version of magic shops to buy things, but they never got there because there were problems. So it's just one of the LARPs we have that is actually set on school setting, and that's the one we usually run for schools, so it's set in their own school at the time. So not a lot of classes in that way, but we have some shorter classes, and we always try to keep each class to about 20-25 minutes. So we keep them very short to have the time to make them feel they get to try a couple of classes, even if they only have a couple of hours to LARP.
So yeah, we don't have a continuous world. I was trying to think about the best way of describing what we have. We have a pervasive environment. We don't have an overarching campaign plot. There are principles behind the way magic works, and the young people are encouraged to explore this fictional world and to create their own stories within that fictional world by playing with the elements with each other. And it's a bit like we give them different colored balls to play with, and they pass them around each other and make up stories amongst themselves. To be honest, we don't actually get as involved in the stories that they make up as you might think. Anything that encourages them to play with each other, we're entirely happy with. And if, as a group, that we have our houses, we have our house of day and a house of night, and we have the summer and the winter schools, and they have themes that the young people follow. but they are free to develop the stories that are relevant to them at that moment in time. And a lot of them just have a lot of stories they want to get off their chest. And so we're happy just to give them the space to do that.
Cole, can you tell just one storyline, like a kid? What kind of stories are they telling them?
Okay, so the usual story I give is of Aisha, who didn't want to choose between the school of day and night, and instead wanted to become an expert on what the school was about at its core. And so rather than having to choose between which classes she went to, she insisted on standing in between the two classes and engaging with the students from both classes. And when they said that she could get into trouble for this, she said, then I'll have to make up for it by knowing more. And that's the kind of thing that we weren't going to get in the way. So we were happy for Aisha to do that until in the end she found her place where she was happy. Turned out she did choose a class in the end. I would love that story to have been the full story of rebellion, but eventually she actually found a place that she was comfortable.
So the follow-up question called, how old are these players, and do they write background stories for their own characters? How does this come about?
They make them up. They make up their characters. We did once have an idea that we would tell them what to play, but they very clearly threw that idea out the window very rapidly. No, they develop their characters. They develop their fiction. They are desperate to follow the truth of the narrative that we lay out, and are really picky about making sure that it fits the parameters that we lay down. But beyond that, we very rarely even find out necessarily what their interactions are. They'll be huddled away in a corner having whole wizard conversations with each other, and you'll hear little bits of it. And sometimes they'll go quiet because, after all, we're only custodians. So we're not actually teachers or head teachers. All we do is facilitate a teaching school environment for them. So sometimes they'll go quiet and say, this is wizard business, and just leave us to it. For all I know, they might actually be talking about off-game stuff. But to be honest, if they're happy and they're sitting there and they're enjoying themselves, none of them seem to have a drop character, and I'm okay with it.
And how old are they?
They are between, God, the youngest we had, well, because some of them have to bring siblings because of childcaring. So some of them are very young, maybe 4 or 5. And some of them are older ones that have clearly been dragged along or told they have to go along by their parents. So we have 17, 18-year-olds. So we have the whole range. Gosh, yes, we do have the whole range of youth there. I've never looked at it like that. That's quite depressing. Yes, we have the whole range of childhood there.
What's like a typical player?
A typical player would be between 10 and 12. Our actual target is to get people engaged and involved in these sorts of activities before 14.
Thanks.
Can I ask Josefin a question? Josefin, one of the labs that you are running is a test for getting into a magic school. Was that correct? Can you describe how that lab is functioning? What are they doing? Are they all passing the test? Or and Cole, thank you. Sounds amazing what you're doing and getting the kids to play across age.
Yes, that LARP is the very short LARP. That is just someone asked us, can you do something to have where kids get to go around and try different cultural stuff? Here you can learn how to do a cartwheel from the circus people. Can you as LARPers do something on this? So we did a really short, like 10-15 minute experience where they show up, they get costume and a name, and we tell them that they all come from magic families, and they have now been called in to do a test to see if it's time to start school. Because in our fiction, you start school the first year your magic showed. So that's why they can be of different age but still be in the same class, because magic can show at different ages, but that doesn't matter. So all of them are called there and get to do 2 super short classes in like, how do you hold your wand? And you get to practice and use the wand a bit. And then they get to do a little test and do a short ritual where we test to see if they get into the school. And we use actually a heat change, a lipstick that changed color depending on heat. But we've hidden it, so we like touch stuff over their hand, and then all of a sudden it becomes red on their hand, and then they pass the test because apparently their magic was good enough. So everyone will pass. And we've had kids who run through the experience and then they come back and they do it again. And we're like, you are aware of that it's going to be exactly the same thing as you did before. And they don't care. They do it 3 times in a row because it's fun. So that's great. But yes, everyone will pass. It's very simple. But that's how we do that. And usually I would say we have ages between 8 and 12. But most of the kids are around 10-ish. Not so many 8-year-olds, not so many 12-year-olds, but something like that.
Anders, you sort of answered the question about the main plot. Do you have a campaign plot? Do they play the same character over and over again? And is there like a bigger storyline?
It depends very much on the kids. They have the opportunity to change from time to time what they're playing. Like from one, for the next one, they can be another person. But we try. We have 2 new people becoming headmasters now. They changed here New Year. Try to have like a 3-month plot. So 3 times is like a plot line. So there's 2 plot lines per season. Spring season and a fall season. But also it needs to function, since sometimes the kids cannot go themselves, so it needs to be available to just jump in and be in the story by themselves. But try to make a 3 a Larp like in a row, so there's 4 plot lines a year.
Like I said, we just finished our first arc, which lasted a bit over a year. And towards the end of it, I found it was great to just fill the lessons with students explaining the plot to each other. The people who've been into every Larp, or almost every Larp, have a massive knowledge of the IP that we created and all the elements of the plot. And then they can explain it to the ones who are first timers. It seemed like a really good role playing for both. We have roughly 10 more minutes left. I'd like to know a little bit about the funding of the Larps. Do you pay your teachers? Do you make money by selling tickets? Is it an NGO that gets government funding? How do you do it?
Well, since we are a company, everyone who is game mastering will get paid. We also are unionized, so that is like we wouldn't do it any other way. But the kids are not paying to participate. It's bought by the municipalities, either as a summer thing that the kids should have something to do in the summer, or it's the schools buying it, and the schools have applied for money from the government, and the government has put away money specifically for cultural experiences in schools, and that's the money they apply for to have us coming there. Yeah, so that's how we do it.
For ours, everyone pays. We have discretionary reductions in the rates. The actual payment per ticket is £5 per ticket. Almost a token, depending really on how many people you're paying for tickets for. But it's important. It's important to our local members that they pay for it. We had this discussion. They want to feel ownership over their club, and they feel ownership over it by paying for it. They don't owe this to anybody else. It's not a gift that outsiders have brought to this community. It's something they pay for and that they buy as a service. So that's what we use for financing. We're considering the possibility of government funding. We do have government support in terms of reductions in costs of rent and costs and overheads. where they do what they can to make things as cheap as possible for us to run. But it's as a point of principle, all of our events are run on a ticket basis.
For the magic school that we run, it's like the most expensive LARP that we run for kids. It's cost 33 euros per time for them to play. It's like 20 euros more than our normal kids LARP, and that has the historical reason that it was started up before college anniversary as a part of the funding to keep the ticket price for the first college anniversary down. So the kids were paying for the prices back then, and there was no reason to lower the price on it. But it has been discussed many times if it should be adjusted. We also get public funding for the house, so the kids pay for the salary for the instructors and costumes, etc. They're not paying for the house. That where the school is, it's paid by the municipality of Copenhagen, and the support we get from having the kids as members. And it's a whole day experience from 10:30 to 4:30 with a lunch break in the middle.
For how much?
33 euros.
We're an NGO, and we've just added the price to 50 euros. Or if you're a member of our NGO, then it's 45 euros. The length, I guess, the scope is pretty much the same as Anders, as the Danish LARPs. We had to raise the price because we have too many players coming. We can't take them all. But we also have a system for, like, if you can't pay that amount of money, if that's the question, then you can get in for free. Because we want to have people from all income groups participating. We're applying for city funding for the first time this year. Hopefully we will get it. We paid the main organizer something, and then really meager pay for the teachers. And then we have lots of parents and other volunteers being ghosts and strange magical creatures. And then there's Corona, the big monster lurking everywhere. We were supposed to run our next LARPs next weekend. We're not going to do that, obviously. We had to cancel just as we launched it. Now we're talking about, and we just started the first experiment with that, doing this like a YouTube remote LARPing things where you have like a 5-minute video from a teacher, and they ask you to do something like write a comment or do this arts and crafts thing at home or something, or make your own video in reply. We'll see how that works. Do you guys have something that you can do during the isolation, or that the kids can do during the isolation?
Yes and no. Because I'm in Sweden and we don't apparently do full isolation here because our kids are still in school. That means our school LARPs are still running. But we have also created a specific LARP that is not in this kind of magic school setting, that is actually made to be run like this online. So if they close the schools, we have a LARP specifically for schools to be run online. But otherwise, we don't have anything like that. We are looking at maybe now Game Master a bit also online, but we'll see. We're not fully there yet. I would also like just to add to what we talked about before. When it comes to character creation, what we have done in the school version we have, they get this paper where they're supposed to come up with their name, and they get to choose like what is your fear, and they have 9 different ones to choose from. And this is what you're looking forward to in school. What is your favorite subject, and pick one, and so on, to create the character. And they get to like pick everything from this list, what they want and so on, except for their background. because everybody wants to have magic parents. No one wants to be like the Muggle-borns. But as a Nordic LARPer, through the tradition, this is of course the best part to play the Muggle-borns. So what we have done is that we have made a little bag of tokens in them, and then they get to pull out a token that represents their background, and then they put it back, and we shake it, and we redo it. And there's quite a small chance to end up having actual magic parents. Most of them might have a mix, and then you will have a bunch of them that will still be Muggle-borns, because otherwise no one will do that. So that is something you can use, which works great. Because when the kids first hear it, they go, "Oh no, but I want to be this. Why can't I choose?" And I look at them, well, can you choose your parents? Because you can't in the real world, and I'm sorry, you're not going to choose that here either. But you can choose everything else. And it works out great, and it's really fun. And then, of course, we treat them differently, depending on background in-game a bit. And usually they love it.
So regarding the coronavirus thing for us, bluntly, this isn't a neighborhood where you let young people down easily. You don't do that lightly. So we made preparations for this the minute it started appearing like it was traveling around the world, and we told people we were going to be cancelling our April event several months ago. Because we were not going to be in a position where we got everybody excited about going to a magic school in a week's time and then told them for whatever reason that wasn't going to happen. It took a lot of work to win people's trust around here, and we're not going to throw that away. And that seems to have been well received. It's been appreciated that we took the time to find out what was happening. And it seemed like a lot of the kids felt more informed about coronavirus because they all had the information about it months ago before the government was actually taking steps to do social isolation. So they're like, yeah, we know because we've already had our magic school closed. So they were not surprised at all when their other things got closed. So that seemed to work out quite well. Having said that, we'd like to work out how we can do something online. There are real barriers in very poor communities to that. Even simple things like the infrastructure for telecommunications around here just isn't as good as it is for a lot of neighborhoods. So it's very easy to overwhelm. Even places like here that have got very good internet connections crash 3 or 4 times a day. So we've got to look into how we can reliably deliver that as a service. But if we can find a way of doing that in a week somehow, then we'll see if we can drum up support. But fortunately, we're rewarded by very enthusiastic support. When people do realize that this is a thing, they are very enthusiastic and helpful about engaging with what it is we do.
For us, we have also canceled the magic schools, and the other kids lab that are running. We are not gonna make an online magic school with the kids, since we're also doing other kids labs as campaigns where they go to, but we are working on starting up a online role-playing groups for the kids, focusing on having them being adventure groups. It's called From Elven Prince to Entrepreneurs, and is working with the kids on how to start up a small business when what happens when the blacksmith have killed his the other blacksmith in town, and the prices goes up for armory and stuff, and how do you monopolize customs, and how to have your upkeep and other stuff like that. But we are both working on launching that and trying to do that. Then we're also looking the kids clubs in Copenhagen do as after school clubs do some Minecraft games in their normal activities where the kids are playing Minecraft together. We are looking into that and seeing if we can do something there with like a lot of kids together playing on different teams, but time will tell if we managed, but we will start up. small role-playing groups with the kids instead.
All right. Thank you very much, our esteemed panel. It's been Cole and Anders. And thank you very much for watching. Whether you're on the Facebook watch party or watching this later in some other online video format. And I'm sure we have many people watching who have already run magic schools for kids or who want to start running one. And we want to invite you along. We want to create a worldwide network of magic schools, exchange tips and ideas, talk about problems and how to solve them, and figure out ways to apply for more resources together. And you're welcome to join. Contact Anders or me, or leave a message in the video comments, and together we will create this network. Thank you for watching, and stay magical.